the themes that emerged in our last session that I want to touch on, there's five of them. The first one is creativity and how we are creative in our work and how we stay inspired. I think sometimes in developing a business or in our work in general, we can get really bogged down in the details, and details are really important, and executing on whatever we want to create is important. And yet, the creative piece, if that juice isn't there and there's not a strategic element, we've all heard, are you working in the business or are you working on the business? And that strategic piece, I think, is a creative thing. And yes, we incorporate external information when we're being strategic, but there's also this sense of what is our intuition saying? How do we want this thing that we're creating to be alive in the world? And that's more of a felt sense. That's more of a touch in and like, this is how I want it to live both in the world, but also how I want to relate to it as it lives in the world. This is what I want my relationship to my business and my work to be. So that was sort of the first theme that we touched on. The second theme was burnout, which is really central and related to creativity. When we're feeling burnt out or we're feeling depleted, it's really hard to touch into that reservoir of creativity. And really how to notice the signs of burnout before they get to a place where we're so depleted that we don't feel like we can function. And for me, and I think in our discussion last time, it was really about like knowing ourselves, practicing proactive self-care, but also recognizing in an embodied way when it doesn't feel right or something feels off or it doesn't feel sustainable. That doesn't mean to say there won't be times that we push through real difficulty when it's really needed, but that won't be the norm. We won't always be pushing through difficulty. We won't always be struggling or feeling like we're doing something insurmountable. There should be times it feels like we're not trying hard, but we're trying easy, as we've talked about in the past. How do we try easy? How do we follow the creative juice in a way that even when the work is hard and tiring, it's not so depleting that we experience burnout? So that was a second theme that we looked at a little bit. And related to those, of course, was the third theme, which is trusting in the process or trusting emergence, and really being with our work in a way that honors it as process. We can't be somewhere that we're not. We are where we are in the work. And to have that greater context of trusting the process, I think is really central. Um, and knowing that the seed germinates in darkness, it germinates underground. We're doing things, we're watering, we're tending, we're weeding, some of which we can control and some of which we can't control. But this deep trust that things are happening because we're doing all of these things, we're setting a context for growth. It's like the gardener doesn't make the plant grow. The plant's nature is to grow, but the gardener does set the conditions that are more likely for the plant to grow big and strong, but they don't make the plant grow. And so, how do we nurture and birth whatever we're working on into reality? There is this sense of we bring it into reality, but really, we set the conditions that relate to the context and to the need and to all the things that we want our business to plug into. And then either the business grows or it doesn't. And then we have to tend to the conditions, but we don't ultimately make it and force it to grow. There's this other thing, the context and the nature of the ecosystem in which we're offering the business, that either it grows or it doesn't. And how do we honor that process and trust in that process? The fourth theme that we looked at last time was structure and freedom. And so, how do we add enough structure that we can deliver this thing that we're birthing, whether it's a business or a role or a job or a project? And then, how do we honor the freedom that we want it to create for us, whether that's financial freedom, more income, and more space to do things that are non-work related? Um, everybody will balance that differently, and everybody will balance structure and freedom differently at different times in their life. And so only by checking in with ourselves do we find out, well, how does this feel to me? How do I want to do it? How many hours a week do I want to work? Something really tangible and logistical like that. Do I want to work 1 hour a week, or do I want to work 100 hours a week? Or do I want to work somewhere in between those two? You get to decide and design how much freedom and structure are required to deliver on the thing you want to deliver on. And if you're in a role, you might have to satisfy a certain number of hours. But if you're designing your own thing, you get to design it how you want. And if it's not working for you, you get to tweak it or redesign it. Um, that balance between structure and freedom was the fourth thing we talked about. And then the fifth theme that emerged was to acknowledge ourselves, to recognize the work that we've already done. You know, it's so easy to say, oh, there's all this stuff I haven't done yet, or I still need to do. But even if we're just at the beginning of building our business or growing our business, the fact that we got to the beginning is miraculous already. It's like all that it took to arrive at the beginning is already a lot of work. And many people don't really step into their value and their life's work until they're over 50. You know, this idea that everything needs to happen by a certain age is ridiculous. It's like, how do we step into what we want to create, acknowledge the work that we've already done, validate, self-validate, in a way that actually supports us so we can move forward? That is a real practice.